Kakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Menahot Daf Yomi Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph 71A1. We were just in the Gemara where it was talking about how do we know that to do with the Omer, because since it says Aviv, Lav Mikal Dika de Lav Aviv, not talking about that we can't learn from here that the Tvua that is not going to be Aviv, even though the Omer is going to permit it. So he says the Lav Aviv Ululam and really Be'emet. So says the Gemara, it's not really Aviv. That means it wasn't completely mevushal kol tzorko. It wasn't completely ripened. Ulolam da'il shalish, and really Be'emet it came up 1/3. Okay, El Amar Shmuel, but rather Shmuel said, Me'achel chermesh, when it says in the Pasuk about the Ktsirat HaOmer, and we're talking about the reaping of the Korban HaOmer, and it says Me'achel chermesh bakama, so it's mashma that the Omer has to come from something which is already fitting, right, with a long sickle, meaning a long utensil to cut it down. So Lav Mikal Diika, the right Diika, the Lav Bar Chamesh, that there is Lav Bar Chamesh. So he says, no, the Lav Bar Chamesh, Ulam Shachat. We're talking about Shachat. You know what Shachat is? Shachat is that when you have it's a Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. We're almost by the Mishnah. We're going to start in the Mishnah in half a minute. Right? It says, we're talking about for the animals, they used to eat the Shachat. It's when it used to grow a third, right? That was called Ma'achal Be'ema, because it didn't grow long enough. And therefore, what happened is that the animals used to come and they used to eat this. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says Rabbi Yitzchak, Kama lav miklal de lav bar kama. When you say kama, it's mashma that there's some which are not kama, and the omen is going to permit it. The lav bar kama lolam, and really bemet, it's not like that, but rather it's talking about it in a gam. An agam is basically when it's going to grow, right? That you could actually fold it over, or you could fold it over. El Amarava, but rather Rava says, Asher tizra mishat zriya. From the time of the zriya, that's when it's going to, the omer is going to permit. Basically, we're having machlokot. When does the omer permit the wheat or the kernels, right? The ears and all these things. Is it when you could fold it over, when you plant it? So Amalei of Papa Dabayach, if so, Afagavdo Yishosami. 1 second. So even if it didn't actually take root, it should also be permitted by the omer. Amalei said, Sodani, Talmid Chacham, Basadektiv. It's written Basadeh. So when it says Asher Tizra Basadeh, it's mashma that it has to be nishrash. So only things which are nishrashu, lifnei Pesach, lifnei Korban HaOmer, are going to be permitted with the Korban HaOmer. You remember we said that the reason why nowadays, after Tetzayin Nisan, all the Chadash becomes Yashan. That's why we don't have a problem of Yashan until the next August. You understand why? Because basically, there's no problems of Yashan. Because even if they come and they start, because everything which was planted beforehand or took root beforehand becomes Yashan automatically on the 16th of Nisan with Korban HaOmer. And even if we don't have Korban HaOmer nowadays, we still automatically become permitted once the 16th of Nisan comes. But there was a machlok, it was the 16th of Nisan in the day, in the nighttime, in the thing. That was a few days ago, if you remember, until when. But once, basically after Pesach, there's no problems of Yashan. Until when? The next August, and they come and they do a new crop and everything, and then they get to the stores and it gets to all the places. You understand? Fine. Okay, until here we're clear? Yeah. Very good. Mishnah. Mishnah in Aleph Amud Aleph. Okay, 71a, the Mishnah. Kotzrim bet hashlachin shebama'amakim. Right? Now we're talking about, right, that the Torah is telling you that you're allowed to come and reap, right, the Tvua Chadasha before the Omer. Remember, reaping is ketzira, kotzer. Right, the Korban Omer was made out of? Which one of the 5 grains? The doctor, save his face. The Korban Omer. Wheat. Korban Omer? Barley. Yeah, the beginning is barley. Yes, barley, and then it's wheat. Very good. Shavuot. Exactly. And then, you're behemoth at the beginning, and then you become a human being. So the Shtei Alechem is the wheat, and the Korban HaOmer is barley. Okay? Kotzrim bet hashlachin sheba'amakim, aval lo godshin. So they're going to be kotzer, the ketzirat HaOmer in the bet hashlachin. Bet hashlachin are fields that they require excessive watering. Okay, you have to right in amakim, avalo godshin, but they do not make aremot, meaning they don't make piles of the omarim of the tvua, which is ktsura, until after the bringing of the omer. Because it's gzerat rabbanan, because maybe you're going to come to eat it and it's still chadash. So it means we allow you to come and to reap it, but you're not allowed to make it into a pile because then you're going to eat it. Okay, so you can reap, cutting it down, but don't make piles. Okay, Anshe Yericho, right, the people of Yericho, right? They had a lot of bet hashlachins and everything. Kotzrim b'ritzon chachamim, so they're allowed to come and they're allowed to reap it, right, with the will of the chachamim. But godshin shelo b'ritzon chachamim, but they didn't do the gidisha b'ritzon chachamim. Obviously they did it. It was an asud rabbanan. Velo michu biyadam, but they didn't rebuke them. So that means even though they did it wrong, sometimes people they just they don't rebuke even though they should, especially by using phones in the middle of shiur, something like that. So, but they didn't rebuke them. but they were not doing it b'ritzon chachamim. Obviously, the rabbis didn't want them to do that. Okay? Next, kotzel shachat ma'achal lebema. You're permitted to come and to be kotzer tivwa, which was not done properly, which was not meaning it didn't ripen properly before the ktsirat omer in order to give to the animals. Why? Because when you come and you cut down the shachat, it's not considered kitzira in the Torah, and therefore there's no yisur of kitzira before the korban omer. Why? Because since it's so small, it just grew a little bit. You cut it down. What are you doing? Why do you wait? No. For the animals. Animals are going to eat. After they eat, it's going to grow again, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to cut it down. So for the animals, there's no problem. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yehuda, Ematai, when do we say you're allowed to cut the shachat for the animals before Omer? Only the beginning of the growing until it becomes a third. Right? Why? Because after a third, that's it. It's not shachat anymore. But Rabbi Shimon says, no, even if it does get to a third, you could cut it down, right? And there's no problem whatsoever. Okay? That means even after it got to a third, you could still cut it down and give it to the animals. Vekotzrim. Mipne netiyot, you're allowed to do ketzira before the korban omer because of the small trees. What does that mean? When you have tivua gdela right between trees, it's not fitting to bring the mincha from the omer, right? So therefore, you're allowed to do it because of the trees, or mipne betavel, that they don't have a place where to sit, or mipne bitul bet midrash, or they don't have a place where to sit in the bet midrash. Meaning they used to have the bet midrash in the fields. So if they have so much, you can't even sit down. So they would permit you to reap it, even though it's going to be before the korban omer. Lo yaaseh otan krichot, but don't make them like stalks, right? Meaning that you're going to have like aval manichan tsevatim, but you just put them without tying. So you make like bundles without actually tying them together. Because when you tie them together, it becomes all hard. Then you might come to eat it. But if it's going to be in such a fashion, you're usually not going to come to eat it. Okay, fine. Next, minchat mitzvah haomer lavo min hakama. The mitzvah of the korban haomer is to come from the kama. What does that mean? The ones which are standing straight up. Lo matzah kama, if you didn't find what is already right, yavi min haomerim, so then you bring from the bundles. Mitzvato lavo min alach. It's always better that it comes from something which is moist, but if you can't find moist, you can bring even from yavesh. Mitzvato likzor balayla. The mitzvah is to do it on the night of the 16th. That's when we start counting sefirat haomer, by the way. So that's the mitzvah of doing it. Okay, and he says nitzar bayom, but if you did it during the day, it's going to be kosher. V'dochet Shabbat. If you remember, we already brought down that it's going to push off Shabbat. So you're allowed to do this on Shabbat even, that you could reap. But you remember there were differences on Shabbat and weekday. You remember the differences? One sickle, one basket, one person instead of three sickles, three baskets, three persons. And there was a machloka there in the Mishnah. So we already learned about this. But again, it's going to be dochet Shabbat. Okay, clear? Gemara. Tanya, we learned in a Braita. Rabbi Binyamin says, Katuv echad omer. One pasuk says, Ki tavo le'aretz u'kutav b'ktzirah, v'avetem et omer. This is Parashat Emor. There it says the pasuk is talking about the ktzirah for hedyot before the omer. And it says there, Uksatem ketzirah means for yourself. And then it says, V'avetem et omer. Then it says, you have to bring the korban omer. Uchtiv, and it says in another pasuk, Reshit ketzilachem el HaKohen. Who gets the korban omer? The Kohen. So how does it work? How does it work that you could do first Ketzatem ketzirah for yourself, and then you bring the omer? And then the second one says, no. Who do you have to bring the omer to first? The Kohen. So one second, who gets first dibs? The Kohen or you? Well, how does it work? HaKetzad. So the Gemara answers, right? Makom shata mevi, right? If it's going to be that you could bring the omer, iyata kotzer mimakom sheyata mevi, right? He says, right? Meaning like this: if it's going to be from a place where you're going to bring the omer, iyata kotzer, you can't come and you can't do reaping because it's fitting for the omer. Any wheat which is fitting for the omer, you cannot reap yourself. But if it's makom she'iyata mevi, if you cannot bring the wheat from there, so therefore atakotzer, so you could reap the barley, whatever it is, from that place. Meaning, it all depends if it's fitting or not fitting. If it's fitting from that place to bring the korban omer, you cannot reap. If it's not fitting, you could reap. Ema, why don't we say mimin she'ata mevi atakotzer, mimin she'ata mevi atakotzer? Why do we go like that? Why don't we just say only barley? What could you bring the korban omer from? Barley. So just say, barley you cannot be kotzer. Anything else, right? Wheat, rice, spelt, whatever you want, you could. So answers the Gemara, Ha'ulo matzitamart mid Rabbi Yochanan. You can't say that because of Rabbi Yochanan. Because Rabbi Yochanan said that there's a gzera shava mereshit from chala. So therefore the reshit which is written by the Yisur of Ketzira before the Omer is just like chala is also nowadays. So too, we have the mitzvah of the Korban Omer also nowadays. Meaning at the end of the day, remember, challah, the only problem is that since we don't know if a Kohen has a chizkah Kohen, that's why we don't give him the challah anymore. But once upon a time, we used to actually have to give him the challah, because the challah goes to the Kohen. Nowadays, whoever said that he's a Kohen. So because of that, we just come, we burn it, whatever it is, we get rid of it. But really, be'emet, it would go to the Kohen. And that you learn from that Gzera Shava, that Mereshit Arisot Yechem, right? That is going to go to the Kohen, so too to do with the Korban HaOmer. Okay, until here we're clear? Two dots. Anshe Yericho. They were kotzim b'ritzon chachamim, but kodshin shelo b'ritzon chachamim, but they didn't give them a rebuke. Man sham alei de'amar michu velo michu. Who's the one that learned that he said that they were michu bi'adam or not michu bi'adam? So he says Rabbi Yehuda was Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda was the one that said, right, that since it was this lashon on Anshe Yericho, so it's mashma that is going like shitat Rabbi Yehuda. V'sav Rabbi Yehuda holds ketzira de Anshe Yericho b'ritzon chachamim. Avai it was b'ritzon chachamim. Why? Hatanya, we learned Shisha Dvarim Asu Anshe Yericho. There were six things that Anshe Yericho did. Shlosha b'ritzon chachamim, shlosha jozon. Three of them they did like chachamim, three not. What does that mean? These are the ones that they asu ritzon chachamim. Markivim dekalim kol hayom. They would come and they would actually put dekalim, palm trees, all the day of the 14th of Nisan on Erev Pesach. Because even though you're not allowed to do melacha Erev Pesach after Chatzot, still Anshe Yericho they were doing this after Chatzot as well. The second one was korchin et Shema. They used to be korech the milah Shema together. That means they wouldn't make a hefsek, right? Shelo yom mafsikim ben milah lemilah of kriyat Shema. Ve'kotzrim lifnei haomer, and they would do ketzira before Omer. So these are three things that they did b'ritzon chachamim. Now there were three things that they did shelo b'ritzon chachamim. Ve'elu she'en shelo b'ritzon chachamim kodshin lifnei Omer. They used to make piles before, right, the bringing of the Omer. Matirim gamziot shel ekdesh shel charuv shel kma. They used to come. They used to benefit from branches of the carob trees or sycamore trees after it was consecrated from their fathers. Right? And they used to come and they used to breach in their roofs and in their orchards in order to give to the poor people during the years of Batzoret, b'Shabbatot u'v'yamim tovim, on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Meaning they used to do this in order that it would fall into their places, and then they would be able to give them to eat on Shabbat and Yom Tov. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. So Amalo Rabbi Yehuda says, "In b'ritzon chachamim mosin, you kol adam mosin." He says, "I don't understand. If this is b'ritzon chachamim, so what? Everyone should do it then. Well, why only Anshe Yericho? Everybody should do it b'ritzon chachamim." But rather, nothing was done with Ritzon Chachamim. But al shlosha dvarim, right? Al shlosha michu bi'adam, al shlosha, meaning like this. We learned at the beginning there were six things that they were done. Let's just pretend six things that were done here in Miami. Three the rabbis were happy with. Three the rabbis are not happy with. What happens was comes up Yudah and he says, "What are you talking about? Everything was shelo b'ritzon chachamim." So then, what's a 3 and 3? The first three they did a mecha. They rebuked them. And then there's another 3 that they didn't rebuke them. Meaning, all 6 were not done with the rabbi's blessings. The only thing is, do the rabbis come and they chop heads or not? So the rabbis know, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But they have to think about when Bemet, do they do it or not. On Shabbat and Yom Tov? They used to breach their roofs. They used to break the roof on Yom Tov in order that, in Shabbat, in order that the fruits fall directly inside. And when they fall directly inside, they could give it to the Aniyim without Trumot Ma'asrot and without all these things. They used to give them to them on Shabbat. It was done on Shabbat and Yom Tov. So they're making, that's the trick in order to make it patur from Trumot Ma'asrot, right? And that's what they used to do here. Okay? So now he comes and he says like this. Here it says in the footnote also, it's Chachamim lo iskimu, because it's still a sur rabbanan, because maybe you're going to go on the tree and actually take it down, right? That means even though you didn't do anything. Okay, but fine. So now he says, right? Al elu. Sorry, one second. So therefore he comes. So which ones were they michu and which ones lo michu? So he says, right? Markivin dekalim kol hayom korchim et shema v'kosin gotchin ifnei omer. Right? Those were the ones that what shelo michu. They didn't give a mecha. The shalom v'shemichu b'yadam. The ones that they did do mecha. Ayin aleph amubet 71b. Matirim azgiot shel ekdesh chachovu v'shikma or portzim pratzot v'gotom v'rtezen kedei lachil neshar lanim b'shnei batzot b'shavim yutim v'yanotim pe'al leyerek u'michu b'yadam. There they did come and they actually rebuked them. Okay, so therefore 3 of them they did not rebuke them, 3 of them they did rebuke them. So ask the Gemara, and according to your reasoning, yeah, and according to your reasoning, yeah, he comes and he says Shisha, it was Shivavu. It was according to your reasoning, it wasn't 6, it was 7. Right? Why? You had the 6 things, right? And really Be'emet, it was actually going to be 7 things, right? Why 7? Because the last one he added V'notrim pe'al layerek. Yeah, notrim peah for yirakot, right? Which means that they were giving peah for yirakot. Peah is the chelek min hayivul hagadel batzedeh on the corner, right? We have peah ve'abikurim v'rayon, right? Peah, korban peah. Peah is peot is the corners of the head. So peah is the corner of the field. You have to give the peah to the aniim. Okay, so it says over here, but he says over here, yirakot is pturim mi peah, right? Because one of the tanaim is that the chayav peah is that it's something that you bring it into the outside for many, many days. Yirakot vegetables, they become rotten, so you can't do it. So if they went and they put it, the peah, for the vegetables, so now it's going to be chayavet maaser because there's no din of peah bemet. So therefore, the ani comes, he wants to eat without taking off maaser, and he's eating tevel. So because of that, they went and they rebuked them because basically they were causing a stumbling block to the anim. When it was not peah, so what happens? You would come and you would be able to eat. There's no problem when it's peah. Now all of a sudden, if it's not really peah, you're obligated to take off maaser. The anim would come, start eating. They were eating without maaser. So because of that, it was a stumbling block for the anim, so they rebuked them. So, which one? For sure not. You're not going to give maaser on shmita. There's no maaser. Why? There's no maaser because it's not yours. It's ifked. It goes to the anim. I'm not going to double tax you. I'm not going to tell you have to give a tax to the poor, but I'm going to tax it as well. We don't do double tax. You understand? Only certain places they do, but I'm saying, huh? So says the Gemara, you're right. Ela sememikan ketzira. You have to take off ketzira, meaning the reaping, because that be'emet that it was done shelo b'ritzon chachamim. He says he's going to be modet to Rabbi Meir that they were katzru sadehem b'ritzon chachamim. So you're right. Take away ketzira, and therefore there's only be 6 things. There's not going to be 7 because the 7th one was the notrim pe'ala yerek. Obviously, there they were moche. 2 dots. Kotzer l'shachat u'machil b'ema. You're going to reap the shachat. Remember, the shachat is the until the 3rd, and you give it to the bema. Tananat, we learned over there in the Mishnah, Velu mafsikin lepeah. These are the things which are going to be mafsikin for the peah, the 2 different parts of the fields. Hanachal v'shlulit v'derech hayachiv v'derech rabim u'shvil harabim u'shvil hayachid ha'kavod b'mot ha'chavim u'shvim v'abur v'anir v'zera acher v'akotzel l'shachat mafsik tivrei Rabbi Meir, which means like this. He comes and he says, when you're going to come and separate the 2 fields, right, to know what exactly is the peah one from another, right, you're chayav to give the peah to each one of them a nachal, right? A nachal is a stream. The shlulit, I don't know how you say the shlulit, it's like a puddle. That's a good word. A puddle, right? Because basically it's all where the water gets there when it rains, right? A puddle. Derech hayachid, obviously we're talking about that's 4 amot or more. Derech harabim, that's 16 amot or more. That means it's a big, people, they come, they walk by. Ushvil harabim, ushvil hayachid, or if it's going to be a common thoroughway, right? Whether it's going to be kavua, whether it's going to be in the winter or in the summer. Habur, right? We're talking about a field which was not planted whatsoever and it wasn't planted or plowed. That Anid is plowed, but it's not planted. Zera acher, or you've got one row, right, between 2 different rows of a species. Ve'akotzel l'shachat, or you're going to be mafsik. This is going to be mafsik between the tivua from one to another, that you have to give a separate pe'ah for both of them. Right? Tivrei Rabbi Meir. Like this. I've got a big field. And in my field, I've got a stream. So it's considered 2 fields. So since it's going to be considered 2 fields, I have to give 2 pe'ahs. Not 1 peah, 2 peahs. Why? Because of how so it's not only just the nachal. It's the nachal, the shluchit, the shvil harabim, shvil hayachid, the bur, nil, zera, all these things. It's a sek, it's a pasek. Yeah, you heard about haki, pasek. Once it makes a pasek, you have to give another peah. Chachamim come and say, no, en mafsik, ela ken charash. When is it going to be a pasek? On the 2 different sides of the fields, if you're going to be choresh the place that you did for the shachat, because according to Chachamim, the ketzira for the shachat, right, it was considered ketzira. So therefore, if you come and you plow it, that's when you're going to be obligated to. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, right? Sounds familiar, this name, right? It says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Zod divrei Rabbi Akiva. Oh, sorry. Rabbi Meir comes and he says B'shitat Rabbi Shimon Amra. So Rabbi Meir is going in Shitat Rabbi Shimon. The Amar that he says, you are allowed to come and reap and give it before, even if it did come as a shlish. Alma kasavar. So you see from here that he holds, kolo shachalav ksira. Even if it's going to be for shachat, it's still not considered ketzira, and therefore it's permitted before the korban haomer. So Yativ Rava comes and he sits down and he says, and he says, Eitvei Rava chabaravuna l'Rava, as Rava chabaravuna to Rava, achala chagav. What happens right now if you have chagavim, grasshoppers that they come and they start eating in the middle of the field, or kismu nimalim, or the Nemalim come and they start to destroying it. Or Shibirata Ruach, the Ruach comes and it breaks it. Akul Modim, everybody agrees that Charash mafsik, lo Charash and mafsik. If you plowed the area, it's going to be hafsek to do with Alichot Peah, but if you didn't plow the area, it's not going to be hafsek. So says the Gemara, Akul Modim man, what does it mean Akul Modim? What does it mean everybody agrees? So he says Rabbi Meir. He says it's going to be Rabbi Meir. Our Mishnah is talking about Shaloi V'Yashlish, that it didn't bring a third. The Braita is talking about that you were Charash, that you actually came and you plowed it. So if you were Charash in, lo Charash lo. So he says B'Shalish Shapir. So therefore it makes sense that we're talking about when it's a Shlish. Right? But if you're going to tell us that our Mishnah is also talking about Shevi Shlish, that it already brought a third. Hashta over there, right? Hashta now, Mahatam, just like over there. Tiksida de Adam, that they were talking about Ksida of a human being. Amar Rabbi Meir still said Lo Shema Ketzira, it's not considered Ketzira. Hacha over here, that it was Nitzira by Chagavim Nemalim or the Ruach. Lo Kol Sheken, that it's not going to be considered Ketzira. Meaning, if over there was done by a human being, and I still say that it's not considered Ketzira, Kal Vachomer, if an animal did it, whether it's Nemalim, whether it's going to be the Ruach, whether it's going to be whatever it is, saying, I didn't do anything. The Chagavim came and they did it. So you're not gonna say that it's considered Ketzira. Ela Rabbi Meir, but rather Rabbi Meir, B'shitat Rabbi Yehuda Amara. Rabbi Meir was going in the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Shimon. The Amar that he said, Ematai, when are you allowed to permit the reaping of the Omer, before the Omer? Bizman she'itchilat shelo v'shlish, only if it didn't come to a third. But once it gets a third, asur, it's going to be problematic. So Emar Dama le Rabbi Yehuda, when did Rabbi Yehuda say such thing? Only for an animal. Le'adam mishama, but he didn't say that for a human being. Meaning, when we said that it was going to be okay to reap, and it's going to be a third, that's only because the animals eat it. It's animal food. But we never said that you could do the same thing and a human being is going to eat it. So then there's going to be three different Tanaim, right? You've got three different shitot in the Tanaim, right? You've got Chachamim, that they say that it's going to be permitted only for an animal. Rabbi Yehuda that argues on Tanakam that he says that it's going to be a third, and it's going to be permitted even for a human being. And then you have Rabbi Shimon, which is a third shita, that it's allowed as long as you started for, even if it's going to be a third. It can't be three different machlokot. What? Ela kiata Rav Dimi, but rather when Rav Dimi came, Amari came and he said, Rabbi Meir b'shitat Rabbi Akiva, Rabo Amar, Rabbi Meir was going in shitat Rabbi Akiva as rabbi. Meaning at the beginning we thought that Rabbi Meir was going in shitat Rabbi Shimon. We pushed that off. We said maybe he's going in shitat Rabbi Yehuda. We pushed that one off as well. Now we're going that Rabbi Meir is going according to shita of his rabbi, right? Rabbi Akiva. No. No, even with that, sometimes you could argue. So here he's going like it's Rabbi Akiva Rabo, that what? The Amar that he said, Af le'adam nami lo avir ketzira, that even for a human being it's not considered a ketzira. The term as we learned in Mishnah, Hamnamer Sadeh, if you're going to come and you're going to do one shura, and then you leave a shura, so it becomes like menumar. Menumar is like the leopard that is called like spots. So you've got one row no, one row no, one row, one. So that's what you did. You came and you started minamer the sadeh. V'shier bo klachim. So you left certain stalks of, I think you call them stalks of, or ears, whatever you call them, kelach, of tevua, of grain, which are lach. Lach means that it didn't finish growing. Rabbi Akiva Omer, peah lechol echad v'echad. You need a peah for everything. Chachamim said, no, bring everything together, and you're only going to make one peah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says in Shmuel, lo chiyav Rabbi Akiva la benamer klayot. Only if you do this named to do with klayot. If you did it, you're going to put it in a storage places. Lo, it's not so. Which means that he didn't say you have to give a peah on every single one. So says the Gemara, any is it so? The hakiyata Ravin, when Ravin came from, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Remember that Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. You remember over here on the chart, you had Eretz Yisrael and Bavel. Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, when he came, he said in the name of Yochanan from Eretz Yisrael, Mechayev ya Rabbi Akiva. He was going to be Mechayev even be'otzar. So answers the Gemara on the top of Ayin Bet Amud Aleph. Rabbi Meir holds that Rabbi Akiva is rabbi to do with one halacha, that letzorech adam it's going to be okay, even if it's going to be before a third. But he argues on Rabbi Akiva that even if it's going to be after a third, it all depends, right? He says if you're doing a leotzar or not. So it comes out that even according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Meir is still going like a little bit like Rabbi Akiva, his rabbi. Okay?
All this to know if it's a pair or not